Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to make a knife similar to the one I made, the camp knife that I made, but instead of making it a big and bulky one, I wanted to make a thin and lightweight one. I figured out when I was on the backpacking trip that you actually don't want any extra weight, so I'm going to try and make the thinnest knife I can. But with that out of the way, hope you guys enjoy the video. So I'm going to start out by just thinning out the piece, because once again I don't want it to be this thick. That's going to be a really heavy knife. Okay, so I've got the knife blank here down to about the thickness I want. As you can see, I had to flatten out the tang as well, because the tang was also as wide as the stock originally was. I'm going to have to do more work on that. I think first, though, I'm going to go ahead and get the blade tip shaped a little bit. I have to start thinking about what shape of knife I actually want to make here. Right now, I'm thinking I don't want a flat grind, maybe something kind of like what we did with the camp knife, but a little bit steeper, just to provide that stability. Possibly a Scandi edge, I'm still not sure yet. Scandi edge being just one bevel, no micro bevel at the very edge. Yeah, but we'll see. I'm going to work on the tip first. Coming over here to the hot cut to cut the tip off. You can shape it without cutting it like I do. I have found that this makes shaping the tip much easier. So this is how I like to do it, instead of just squishing this corner back. This seems to be a lot easier to me, so that's why I do it this way. There we go. Now I'm going to form the actual tip shape. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to work on the tang now. So just like in the last video, I've got my isolating swage here. There's a similar tool that's called a blacksmith's guillotine. However, it's a lot harder to make than a simple spring swage, so I decided to go with this swage instead. And basically all this swage is two flat pieces of metal that meet up in the same spot. And I can strike it with the hammer, and as you can see, it flattens them equally on each side. And this just helps me to get a cleaner transition, a more square transition, before I go into grinding, so that I waste as little material as possible. So I've decided something since we last talked, and that is that I'm going to do a all steel knife with a metal handle. And essentially what that means is I'm going to take this piece of metal here, I'm going to draw it down a lot more And then I'm going to bring it back and around into a scroll up here. So the handle will kind of come up, around, and into a scroll, and there will be a handle there, just made of steel, with some negative space in the middle. And that actually is going to make an extremely light knife, which is exactly what I was wanting to make when I first started this project. I think it's going to be pretty cool, but we'll see at the end, I guess. But yeah, I might need to take a little more material off of here. In fact, I think I'm going to do that just to make this process a little easier. Alright, so I've just finished drawing out what will be the handle, and I need to decide some things about the handle, whether or not I'm going to twist it before I curve it around, if I want to make it octagonal instead of just a square piece, if I want to round it. I might actually want to flatten it this way so that the handle's just a little bit wider. It's an interesting idea. I've never seen one like that before. I think I'm going to try to do that. Make it more oval shaped. See how it works. So, to make it oval shaped, I'm going to first round the whole thing, and then I'm just going to smack it on one of the sides. And I think that will give me an oval shape. I hope, at least. We'll see, but it seems like it should work to me. So. So I've already begun to flatten out this back here. I'm kind of just going along and lightly hitting these sections here. Checking the width as I go to make sure it all stays uniform. And it does, so we're all right. Alright, and then I'm going to do a scroll on the end, facing this way, facing down, so that as I bend it over, it comes out on the outside. Coming over the edge of the anvil like always, using brushing strokes, and then correcting the scroll as needed. Alright, that looks good to me. I'm going to heat up the middle and start bending it over. Alright, so with something this thin I can just pull it on the horn like that. straighten it back out most of the way. I need to re-flatten this and make sure it's all lined up again because it got a little twisted, and then I'll try again. Almost there. Now this is a small enough difference that I can kind of just hit it towards me like I was scrolling it, and then just push it to the right size at the end. Almost. Alright, I think that looks pretty good for the blade. I'm going to let it cool and just kind of hold it like I would if it was already done, and see how I like the handle to make sure before I continue on to the blade. So I cooled this off with some water since it wasn't at critical temperature. That means it would not have hardened. And I figured something out with this handle design. I like it a lot. It doesn't feel quite right holding it like this. I feel like I should either be putting my thumb on the back, which is not good for your hand, or putting my index finger here over top of the scroll like this. So I think what that means is I need to bring this scroll in, I need to force this down here, and then I think I'm going to use a piece of round stock to kind of make a little finger loop in here, a finger indentation, so that you can use the knife like that. To make the finger indentation I was talking about, I'm going to be using this Hardy tool that I made a while ago for helping me draw stuff out to use in conjunction with the rounding face of my hammer. It's got a nice radius surface, so I think if I put the blade edge down and smack the back of it, I can create that indentation, flatten it back out, and work it out from there. So once again, I'm just going to take it right on that edge spot I was looking at earlier, and I'm just trying to make a little finger indentation, checking as I go to make sure that everything lines up properly before I take a whack at it. I need to straighten the blade back out. It got kind of messed up there. Alright, and then it looks like I need to draw this back out since it got messed up as well. Okay, that looks good. I need to straighten the handle back out as well, and then we'll see how it feels in the hand. Just going to take it over the edge here and just tap it lightly to straighten that back out. Okay, and then keep need to straighten this back out, so I'm going to have to unbend it just a little bit, move it forward a little bit. So I think it feels a lot better to hold it like this. The only thing that is kind of bugging me is this scroll feels a little sharp for this finger. I think what I'm going to do is uncurl it and sort of just bend it over. And then after that, I'm going to work on the blade. I think that'll fix all the issues that I have with it right now. It feels pretty good as is, but I just want to make sure that it's up to what I'm wanting from this knife. Okay, so what I ended up doing, instead of bending this little piece right here down over this finger slot, I actually made it to hold this finger in place as well. So I think I really like what has happened with the handle. I think the handle itself is done. Now I'm going to move on to final profile of the blade and then beveling. And then I'll move on to grinding. Like I said, I'm going to do, I think, a very sharp bevel. And then I think in the flat of the blade, I'm going to drill some holes to make it even lighter than it already is. Still pretty light knife already, but I think I'm going to drill those holes just to make it all the lighter. Okay, so I think I'm done with the forging, except for putting my touch mark in near the finger loop position there. I need to make sure that the beveling didn't interfere with the handle at all. And as you can see, it's a lot brighter. I just put some green coal on the fire. I did switch to bituminous coal. I found somebody who supplied it in Cincinnati, luckily. They are called Cincinnati Bulk Terminals. So if you want some bituminous coal, go down to downtown Cincinnati and go to the address that they have on their website. If you call them, they probably it'll probably take a few times. Don't call the coal sales number. Just try to get to a representative and set up an appointment, and then you just drive up there and the guy will help you get some coal. Pretty great place. But I'm going to show you what my fire looks like with green coal on it now. It looks a lot cooler. So it's very hard to see with this camera I'm using here, but or at least hard to see the background because of how bright the fire is. But as you can see, that coal oil is burning off, and you can see down there in the middle it's white hot. So I like the bituminous coal a lot better. I would highly recommend getting some. It's also a lot cheaper than anthracite is. But over here, the knife looks pretty good. I'm going to test it, make sure that, because it looks like that finger loop may have gotten just a little bit distorted right there. I hope it didn't. That means I'll have to reforge it if it did, but I'm going to take a look at it and then I will tell you guys what I think and move on to grinding. Alright, so the knife looks pretty good. The finger loop I can fix with an angle grinder pretty quickly. I'm going to anneal the blade before I go in for the day, because if I'm drilling holes in it, I don't want to dull all of my drill bits. So I'm going to have to anneal it so that it isn't very hard tomorrow, and then tomorrow I will be finishing this blade. So I've begun the work on the blade here. A little bit of surface grinding just with the angle grinder to get some of the scale off. I'm going to move to the belt grinder here to finish truing up that bevel, and then I'm going to just flatten it out with a file just to make sure everything is, you know, fully planed and flat. So I'm now moving on to filing the bevels to clean them up, make them flat. I've discovered the only way I can actually hold this is if I take this rounded piece of wood and kind of put it in that finger loop I made in the middle, and then squeeze it together. So filing this section right next to the piece of wood is going to be pretty awkward. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that. but I'm gonna have to figure that out later. I'm gonna start up at the tip and work my way down. Alright, so I've got the rough filing done on the bevel here. I'm having some issues with the handle though. It's kind of hard to tell. I think... Here, let's see if I can get the camera to focus. Come on. It's not wanting to focus. There we go. So, it's a little hard to tell, but the handle itself kind of veers off that way a little bit, to that direction, near the end, which means it has a bend in it. This being spring steel, it's unsurprisingly springy, even after I annealed it, which was very helpful. Basically all I did was just leave it in the forge overnight as the forge cooled down, and that worked perfectly. I think I'm also going to open this curve back up and clean this up because it's at a slant, and that's sort of messing things up as well for how this meets up. I also forgot to touch mark it down here, so I'm going to have to do that as well. And then I think I'll go to the heat treat from here. I might take it on a fine belt on my grinder just to make that process less arduous later. But I'm liking where the blade is right now. I have a little bit of a plunge line. It's very hard to see. A little bit of a plunge line going on there. This is my second attempt, so that it's looking a little rough. It's a lot better than the first attempt on the camp knife, though, and it's on both sides. So we'll see how that goes on this one. I'm gonna set you guys back up out there, and I'm gonna fix this up, and then I will show you guys where I'm at that point. Okay, so essentially what the problem that I was having was that this curve right here at the end was actually curved and tilted that way a little bit, to that direction. So I had to straighten the whole thing out to straighten that back out. I'm now going to move on to here. I'm going to go over to the angle grinder really quick and just kind of true that up. I'm then going to touch mark it, bend it back over, and then we should be good to go for heat treat. Alright, so I've got the touch mark imprinted in there. I think I am going to take the blade to my fine belt on my belt sander before I do the heat treat, because that way, when the heat treat is done, I will have less grinding to do, and because the steel will be a lot harder at that point, that means that I'll have a much easier time doing it now than I will doing it later. So, I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. And then I will show you guys the quenching. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna go over to the fine belt on the grinder and I will show you guys the quench. So I have a old soup can here, which is slightly better than a plastic bottle, so it should work okay. I'm gonna heat this up and quench it. I'm only gonna be quenching the blade, so the actual tank here I have doesn't have to be too big. I do eventually need to get an actual, like, sizable quenching tank for oil, though, because I have never actually had, like, an adequate quench tank for oil for my knives and things. What I use right now for my regular quench tank is actually a very large old chili can. And it works all right. If I could find something similar, maybe a little bit smaller, maybe more rectangular, would be better, just because that would more efficiently use the space of how a knife is shaped. Alright, here we go. Alright, I'm gonna wait for this to cool down just a little bit. The Ricasso is still red hot, so I definitely don't want to put it in water quite yet, because if I do that, then it might actually crack the Ricasso area, which obviously would be a very bad thing, and would probably result in me making this into a hook, which I'd be very sad about. This took me a long time to make, so don't want to be making a hook out of this knife. Need to check if the blade is straight. Looks like it did not deform, which is very good. Yeah, that means I can move on to... Oh wait, hold on. There's a slight deformation there. Yeah. I'll have to reheat the blade, straighten that out, and re-quench it. So I have shined the blade up, just the bevel. I'm going to be looking for a light straw color, like I said. It's a lot harder to see that for me in the dark, so I may have to turn the flashlight on. I'm not sure yet. I will see in just a minute. Oh, so it's a little hard to tell, but as you can see down here, we're starting to get a nice straw color. At the very back, there's a little purple. You don't want that. That'll make it too soft. It's going to be kind of hard for me to control this using my forge. That's why I usually use the help of a blowtorch, but I think I'm going to try to do it all with the forge, quenching as I go in the water, like I said, to control the heat. And then I'll show you guys what it looks like before I shine it back up. So as you can see, I got blue down here and I got blue up at the tip, so controlling the heat is very hard. This right here is actually perfect. This is that straw color I was talking about. That's exactly what you want. Unfortunately, because it's blue for most of the section of the blade here and the tip, I'm going to have to requench it tomorrow. If it were just the tip here, it would be alright, because then that just means the tip is even less likely to crack. But this is unacceptable. It's going to make a low quality edge on there. It won't hold nearly as well as it could. So I'm going to have to requench that tomorrow. So I went ahead, hardened it for the final time, and I actually tempered it with the blowtorch. It was a lot easier to control that, so it turned out working out pretty well. I'm going to go over to the Scotch-Brite wheel, and I'm going to use the Scotch-Brite and then buff the blade. And then I will wire wheel the handle, and I might do a wax coating, and then it'll be done. I'll show you guys the finished product. Alright, so here's the finished knife. As you can see, I've got 3 holes in the spine. I actually forgot to drill these until after I was done hardening and tempering it, and my steel drill bits that are actually meant for drilling through steel weren't sharp enough, so I had to sharpen a masonry bit to actually drill through it, and even then it took a very long time to drill through. Lesson learned, always drill holes before you harden it. But yeah, this actually turned out pretty close to what I was envisioning. I was envisioning these holes a little bigger, so they took off more material, made it a little lighter. But this is actually a pretty light knife for the strength that I think it has. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, a comment, and please subscribe. And share it with your friends. It does help me out a lot. And I hope to see you guys in the next one.